Welcome back to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. I'm Joe, joined by Mel.
Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast, where we guide you on the path to raising confident, independent, and resilient children in a strong family environment.
Special episode for you today, and we're going to do it with a slightly different style. Over the course of the other, I don't know how many we've done, 70 or so episodes, most of them are tactical. You listen to the episode, there's some action steps that you can take immediately after to help improve your family life, help to build more resilient kids. But we haven't dove much into the mindset piece of it. Part of it's because I'm just more comfortable talking about the tactics. I'll have to admit that. I don't want to sit and talk all foo. Is that what it is?
Proof?
Yeah, both of those. I don't want to do either.
Okay.
And so we don't. However, it is super important. You can give someone the exact instructions on how to build something, but if they don't feel like building it, they don't feel like it, they have other baggage going on, and it's going to be tough to execute on. And so with that in mind, we're going to go a little bit more abstract, but a little bit more in terms of the mindset on why you have to stay in the game when it comes to family life.
And your strength is more the tactical, and my strength is more what you're talking about here with the abstract. When you say it like that, it makes it sound like it's less important, but really, it's hard to follow through with tactics if you don't have the right mindset.
No, it's super important, but uncomfortable for me to talk about because I have high expectations of people's mindset and I don't know how to fix a lot of them. I can only share things that I've done that have helped us. And perhaps you can do more. Mel has the psychology, social work background.
I think to start, though, I think it's important to recognize what type of person you are. Are you the type of person that is more tactical? Or are you the type of person that likes to delve into the abstract? And I almost think we balance each other out. Sometimes I get too involved in the abstract and you're like, listen, we just need to get a tactic and do something. We can't just talk about it. I think we know that about each other. And then that helps us to balance out a bit more.
When I was playing high school football, 3 of the 4 years we stunk the team overall. I had a lot of buddies on the team, but we weren't good and the record proved it. And we'd be getting it handed to us, and the coach would come out, like call a timeout, come out to the huddle and be like, you gotta dig in, you gotta drive and do this motivational stuff. But we stink. Like, how do we get some good plays? Like, what's going on? We need more answers because it's not going right now. And we would never get them. We get the raw. And when I first joined a business group, it was very similar. It's like, you gotta wake up and kick butt every morning. You just gotta grind. Like this, how? Tell me how, and I can do it. And they were lacking any substance. And so that's probably why we spent 75 or so episodes on substance first. It's just not you just got to do it. You got to wake up and be tough. Oh, okay, cool. Now let's actually talk about real things. However, there is a time and place for that. Some days you have to wake up and give yourself a little bit of a motivational kick in the rear.
That's for sure. There's
a saying Jim Rohn uses about motivation. I think him and Zig Ziglar used to argue about the importance of it because Zig would say it's important. Jim Rohn's like, all right, if you don't teach people things, you take an idiot and you motivate them. Now you just have a motivated idiot.
Helpful.
No. But what we want to do is to remind you there are tons of episodes on tactics, on exactly how to do this, but we're going to do a different style. And if you find this beneficial, we ask that you share it with one person. Very doable. We're shooting this podcast to help out families. It's our goal. We're doing it as a passion project, and we need the help of sharing it to one person. So here we go. On the mindset of staying in the game, we have an episode on relationships in season 1. It is one of the steps the strong family path is to manage the relationships in the household, which are the kids to themselves, the kids to kids, you to your spouse, you to yourself. And there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. Because what you do is you look at the relationships, you find what's off, and then you work on fixing that one. This is where it can really spiral. You can come really withdrawn if you don't think you're getting enough energy poured into you in the household. And you start to do other, hobbies or things to do. You find yourself avoiding family life. I've seen parents like nowadays go play video games or stuff with their time because they're trying to avoid the discomfort of handling situations in their household.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I love the topic of keeping your head in the game. because I'm going to give a quick example. For Henry, he had a soccer game last week, and a lot of the kids, like part of the play, they'd be like, they'd have the ball, then they would lose it or whatever. And what the coach would say was, stay in the play, stay in the play. And I had never quite heard them say that before. And I loved that because something didn't go right. Okay, let's say your kid came home and they're grumpy, or something happened at school that you need to discuss with them, or they're just bored and driving you nuts. You have to stay in the play. You can't just you can walk away to cool down or whatever, but you have to still be willing to handle it, to deal with it. And it was the same thing. He was trying to get the kids to remember, yeah, that didn't go well. The other team stole the ball from you. Stay in it. It doesn't matter necessarily. You got to move on to what's next. And I thought that was a great way of thinking about it. Sometimes it's easier to think about it in a more concrete example like sports than in life. And I think if you have to first be very humble and honest with yourself, are you doing these things? Are you starting to pull away and spend that time that would have been as a family by yourself? Are you saying, I need me time more often? Not that you don't deserve and need to have time to yourself, but is it starting to impinge on?
Is it to recharge yourself, or is it an avoidance tactic? And that is the tough part that you need to figure out. Is it an avoidance tactic that you're trying to not address something in the house that needs addressing?
So I think speaking with examples is helpful. So in the evening, as part of the evening debrief, which is one of our 7 steps, I put Everett to bed and then I go and chat with Logan and Henry. And honestly, some nights it's easy and fun, and some nights it is very difficult. And I will find myself almost making an excuse. Like if it's getting late because we had sports or whatever, I'll almost say in my head, maybe I'll just tell them that I'm really tired and skip it. But I know, like I know that thought, and then I know I need to still do the debrief, but I still have the thought, so I'm not going to deny it. I do sometimes want to avoid it, but I see the bigger picture of needing to stay in the game. If I break the pattern of that, then when they really need me, they're not going to come to me. So I have that feeling, and I've had the thought often lately. It's been a challenge. For me personally, it's challenging as the kids get older into the teenage years. There's a whole different ball game of things to handle. And I do find that I start to want to avoid some things, but I know the benefit outweighs that, so I do it anyway. So I give you that example because I think that might help you figure out, am I avoiding something because it's just too hard, too difficult, I'm too tired, I don't want to deal with it? And ask yourself, why am I avoiding it? And if I avoid it, what might happen? So much, like you said, I went to school for psychology and I was a therapist for a little while. So much of what you do with people is ask them, if you do this, what will happen? Because it's so easy in the moment to just get carried away by how you're feeling in the moment. But you might have to stop and say, okay, if I avoid this evening debrief tonight, what might happen later on that will be worse than if I just avoided it right now? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I do want to give, this is tough because you have to be very introspective. So I want to give you some things to look for to figure out if this is happening. And one is called self-fulfilling belief cycles. It was presented to me in a book by Ari Weinswig, Anarchist's Guide to Growing a Business or something like that. Actually going out to see Ari next week with Vince. And we would teach this to our staff and we'd internalize it. But it is a great tool, and I'm going to do it very simplified right now. But basically, if you believe something, you're going to find more to reinforce that belief. So if you believe bedtime is going to bust your chops, you go down there and you're like, what's going to bust my chops today? One kid says something, I knew it was going to bust my chops, and then you keep fulfilling that belief that you already had. That creates a spiraling effect. That's why it's a cycle. It goes around and around. You find things that you believe are going to become true. Kid spit toothpaste on the side. Oh my goodness, my chops are getting busted. I'm so tired every day. Oh, so you have the power to switch that because bedtime's going to happen. Instead, you can believe, oh, my kids are going to show me some sort of love tonight in some small way. And you go down there and they spit some toothpaste around. All right, well, whatever. I'm gonna look for the good in it. And you read a little book and they give you a big hug and they hold on for an extra second. Like, I knew my kids love me. And then you can change the cycle during the same situation, depending on what you believe is going to become true. So I don't want to become too deep on that. However, that is extremely powerful. If you go into a situation like you're almost wincing is a good physical check. Like you feel your eyes getting a little bit narrow, feel like you're bracing physically for that chop busting to come. You have a faulty belief cycle, and it's going to continue every night of your life until the children grow up and move out. So you want to address it now. You want to switch it because that time is still going to happen. And all you need to do is change what you believe about that time. And then it's very powerful. You can do it in under a week.
So I started some part-time work with the consulting company that Joe works for. And yesterday I had the privilege, honestly, I feel like this is a privilege, to sit in on the Wednesday call. And sometimes it's tactical, just like this, and sometimes it's more of a mindset. And yesterday it was very mindset. And I think it applies very directly to what we're talking about. So it was about, and this is a consulting group for gym owners, but the topic was, are you having negative thoughts that are negatively impacting how you run your business? So one of the things might be, one of your staff comes to you and says, can I talk to you for 5 minutes? And then you immediately start to think those negative thoughts. Oh my gosh, they're going to quit. This is going to be awful. And what he was trying to show was, if you can identify that negative thought and replace it. So just like you're saying, if you go into the evening debrief thinking it's going to be terrible, identify that, which kind of is what I explained earlier, and then replace it with something more silver lining. Like maybe at least, like we do a little Bible verse, like at least I'm giving them some biblical wisdom this evening, even if everything else goes terribly. And I think one of the things that he suggested to ask yourself, and this we've talked about the Captain Snout and the Superpower Questions children's book by Dr. Amen. And it's so great because the question, is this true? Is this 100% true? So whatever negative thought you're having, whether it be about the evening, whether it be about after school, or whatever situation you're having in your family, ask yourself if it's completely true, or are you just lying to yourself? And the second question he asked was, if this didn't bother me, what would I be doing? So if you were like neutral towards bedtime, we're using this as an example because it makes sense to me right now. If I was neutral about it, what would I do? And I probably would make sure that I did the Bible verse, that we had a little discussion, that I would read to them like I normally do. So you ask yourself, if this didn't bother me, if I could set the feelings part aside and just focus on what this is about, what matters right now, what would you do? And I think those two questions are powerful for really any situation, but it applies to this as well.
All right. Very good. And I want to go through 3 ways that I deal with it. And then Mel, you can give a couple of ways, and then we'll land the airplane on this podcast. And the reason why I want to give 3 ways is because not all of these will be true for all people. We do believe that the Strong Family Project, there are steps of the path that all households should do in their own way. Like every family should have core values. You can define what they are for your family. And we give away those steps for free at strongfamilyproject.com. You just download the path. However, when it comes to techniques to deal with situations, there's going to be personal preference on how to deal with it. So I'm going to give a couple, Mel will give a couple, and then hopefully you can find one. The goal isn't for you to do them all. The goal is for you to find one and try it out. So the first one, and mine are going to be a little bit more dry and short. I was doing a 50 for the Fallen, which is a cool organization that does fundraising for veterans, run by buddy Chad. I was doing a 50 for the Fallen ruck. So you carry basically your water and stuff, and you go for 50 miles, and you do reflection during that time. I don't remember if it was I said it to Adrian, one of the guys there that helps lead it, or Adrian said it to me. I don't remember how it played out. So excuse me if I say it wrong, but someone was complaining like, oh, my foot really hurts or something like that. Oh, my foot really hurts. And I'll give Adrian credit. We'll go that way. Let's say it's me complaining about my foot. Like, oh, my foot really hurts. Yeah, why don't you just think differently about it? Good point. Like, you're going to have to finish this anyways. And so, yeah, my foot is uncomfortable, whatever. And then you just keep going. So some of the question is, when you're in a stressful situation, like, yeah, why don't I just think differently about this? Not easy, because the second part is you have to check your emotions at the door. If you feel yourself losing emotional control, then you got to pull the parachute and say, we're going to deal with this tomorrow. We're going to deal with it during the family meeting. We talked about those on other podcasts. You do have resources to still deal with it, but outside of the moment. You need to expand your comfort zone where you can sit in uncomfortable situations and not get emotional about it. That takes practice. Sometimes you won't win that battle, and sometimes you do need to kick it to later in the week. However, your goal should be to become unreactive emotionally when a kid does something acute, spill some milk. Like, you're not going to fly off the handle. Like, okay, it just happened. It, like, me flying off the handle does nothing to improve the situation except for make the kid feel terrible over an accident. But I had a long day, whatever. You got to still be able to sit with it, control your damn emotions. And so you need practice with it. Every time things that you feel yourself getting a little heated, a little bit red in the face, say, okay, let me take a breath and let me see if I can use a tactic like a deep breath to be able to work through this situation. Incredible role modeling for your kids. My last one is to do some more hard things outside of your family life. I love these long challenge doing rim to rim to rim on the Grand Canyon here in about 10 days. So there may not be a podcast next week. However, the reason why I like these hiking challenges that were introduced to me by a good family man named Kevin Blake, who would take me out on these long hikes, is it is like these acute situations practice all in one day, because there is a sign at the trailhead. Used to be a sign at the trailhead by our house that said, "You are your own rescuer." And it would explain, no one's coming to save you. Like, you go up on this mountain. We're not risking other lives to come save you. And what that means is you got to figure it out. There's no point in sitting, and I use this for lessons with the kids when they're doing the Pikes Peak rite of passage. You get halfway. Oh, I don't want to go any further. What other choice do you have? Do you want to go back? Do you want to go forward? It's the same distance. We still have to go regardless. And so you can train that ability outside of emotional situations. Start doing some challenging things in your life that are a little bit more controllable, like a long distance hike. You're more capable than you think. Go out and do a long walk, do something challenging physically, and that carries over to how you approach these emotional situations in your household.
So I thought of two, because I agree with everything you're saying. And one of them is thinking big picture. So I think it's very easy to get bogged down by the day-to-day things that might happen in a household. And those things, like just like bill paying, it has to happen, but it's not really big picture stuff. Our big picture is we want to raise, what do we say every time at the beginning? Confident, independent, resilient kids. That's big picture. And I want to make sure that I'm always reminding myself of that. And I was actually giving the kids this perspective this morning, because they can get stuck on something like a fad, like these certain sunglasses or whatever. Like, I need to have these sunglasses. Everybody has them. And if you think about like big picture life, the sunglasses don't matter. So I think sometimes asking yourself, is this situation that I'm in right now, is this negative thought, how does it relate to the big picture? And I think that can be a really important perspective to have, because it's easy to get bogged down by day-to-day busyness and lose focus on what really matters. And having, you mentioned earlier, the values, having those family values really does help keep you focused on big picture and not get as frustrated with the day-to-day little things that can pop up, which will pop up. So that's my first idea. And my second is reaching out to your support system. It's important to have people in your life. I mean, we are super close. You're my best friend. Sometimes I need to talk to a friend, because you have to like remove yourself from the people involved in whatever your situation is. So if like we're struggling with something with the kids at home, sometimes it helps to go talk to a friend who's outside of our home, because it gives you a different perspective. It lets you almost process it in a different way, because if you're talking to a friend, it's easier to check the emotions at the door, I think, because you're not talking to the person that's in the situation that you're trying to work through. Reaching out to that support system, but not doing it just to complain. It's more to try to be able to get a perspective on what's happening and to get some kind of a solution and some kind of an action step. And sometimes we do need to complain to get it out of our system. And that might be a way to keep the emotions at the door, because you have to process it. But I think it does help sometimes to get an objective person, a more objective person to speak to about whatever you're dealing with. And if you're willing, you mentioned earlier, if you're willing to be introspective, to humble yourself and really say to yourself, hey, I have been checking out at bedtime. I have been checking out at dinner time. Maybe you're checking your phone at dinner time when you used to not to. I think it's important to be honest with yourself and then figure out, how can I manage this? Do I need to go talk to someone else? Do I need to talk to my spouse or to have some time to myself on a walk and figure it out? But make sure that you're using your support system.
This is absolutely the snowball effect. As you get better at doing something like handling a dinner time, it spills over to handling bedtime better. It spills over to having discussions in the car better, and you get much better results. Consider it like this, and then we'll sign off. It's like investing in your retirement. It's a little bit out of your paycheck every week that goes into retirement. Yeah, well, you don't even notice that it's happening. And then over time, it snowballs, and you have a retirement nest egg. Imagine if you didn't do that. You're just like, I'm going to skip all the small stuff. And then at the end, you're broke as a joke. and you got to go to the nursing home no one wants to go to because it's so low level because you didn't invest in anything. And now at the end of your life, you have no return on how you decided to live. It's so small in the daily actions, you don't see it. However, it'll be massive when they leave the house and they have someone who role modeled the ability to handle challenging situations. It'll drastically improve their life, and it'll drastically improve your life and how you feel about how you handle things.
And another way to say that is making deposits. We talk to the kids about this. When you do something nice for someone, you're making a deposit into that relationship. So I'll go back to the bedtime routine example. If I'm telling myself in my head, this is going to suck, I'm not looking forward to this tonight. If I say to myself, but I'm making a deposit into my relationship with my kids, it immediately shifts my perspective and makes it more doable.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. Share it with one person if you found this helpful.